I didn't cry when it happened. That surprised people. But what they didn't know was that I had already done all my crying 3 months before, alone in my kitchen at 2 in the morning, with nothing but a pot of cold coffee and a letter I hadn't yet decided what to do with. What happened at that church, on that Sunday in October, in front of people who had watched me grow from a young bride into a grandmother, was not the beginning of my story. It was only the moment it finally became visible. My name is Margaret Louise Hale. I was born in a small house on the edge of Cookeville, Tennessee, the second daughter of a school principal and a woman who made the best cornbread in 3 counties. I am 67 years old. I raised 2 children mostly by myself, buried a husband, kept a job, paid a mortgage, and never once in all those decades asked anyone to fight a battle for me. Until I didn't have to. Until I let one single piece of paper do it for me, I want you to understand who I am before I tell you what happened. Not because I need your sympathy, I don't, but because this kind of story gets twisted when people hear only the confrontation part. They miss everything that made it possible. My husband, Gerald, passed in 2009. Cancer. Slow and then all at once, the way those things go. We had been married 31 years by then, and when he left me with a paid-off house, a modest retirement account he had been careful about, and 2 grown children. Daniel was 33 when his father died. Stephanie was 29. Good children, I always believed. Stephanie moved to Nashville, married, had her own life that I admired from a respectful distance. We talked on Sundays. She sent cards. She came for Christmas when she could. That was a real relationship, quiet and steady and true. Daniel was different. Daniel had always needed more attention, more reassurance, more of whatever room he was standing in. Gerald used to say Daniel was just made louder than most people. I accepted that for a long time. I told myself it was love that made him that way. After Gerald passed, Daniel moved back to Cookeville. He said it was to be close to me, to help me manage the house and the yard and all the things Gerald used to handle. I was grateful. I told him so many times. I cooked his favorite meals on Friday nights. I didn't complain when he started bringing his girlfriend, Karen, over without calling ahead. I didn't say a word when she rearranged my kitchen cabinets. That was the first thing I should have paid attention to. The cabinets. I am a woman of deep, quiet faith. I have belonged to First Baptist Church of Cookeville for 42 years. I was baptized there. Gerald's funeral was there. I have sat in the same pew, third from the left, halfway back, for longer than many of the congregation's children have been alive. Pastor Willis has known me almost as long. He is a kind man, measured in his words, careful with people's dignity. He did not judge. He listened. That mattered to me more than I ever told him. Church, for me, was never about performance. It was about the one place where I could sit in the presence of something larger than my own fear and feel, for an hour, like everything might work out. Even in the hardest years, and there were hard years, that 1 hour held me together. I tell you this because what Daniel did at church was not just an embarrassment. It was a violation of something sacred to me. It was done in the one place I had never felt small. The changes in Daniel happened gradually, the way water erodes stone. You don't notice it day by day. You notice it when you look down one morning and realize the ground is different from what it used to be. It started about a year after Gerald passed. Daniel began making small decisions without asking me. He hired a man to refence the backyard, said the old fence was an eyesore. I liked that old fence. Gerald had built it, but I let it go. Then he told the insurance company to add his name to the car policy, said it was easier for billing purposes. I was still driving my own car. I was still paying the insurance, but his name was on it now. Then he started coming to my doctor's appointments. Not everyone, just the important ones, the cardiologist, the one with the specialist about my knee. He would sit in the corner and take notes and ask the doctor questions before I had finished asking my own. The doctor started looking at him when she answered. I noticed. I didn't say anything yet. Karen was polite in the way that some women are polite when they are waiting for something. She asked about my health more than my life. She wanted to know if I was tired, if the stairs were hard, if I had thought about what would happen to the house when I couldn't manage it anymore. I was 64. My knee hurt sometimes. That was all. But the word manage started appearing in more conversations. Daniel couldn't understand why I still balanced my own checkbook by hand. He thought I should let him have access to the bank account just in case. I said I'd think about it. I thought about it for 3 weeks. Then I quietly opened a second account at a different bank and started moving most of my savings there. I wasn't accusatory about it. I wasn't even certain yet. I just felt something that soft, low alarm that a woman my age learns to listen to. The one that doesn't ring loud, just hums, just says, "Be careful, Margaret." The real shift happened in the spring, about 18 months ago. My neighbor Bet, a woman I've known since our children were in diapers, came to my door on a Tuesday afternoon with a look on her face I had never seen before. Hesitant, careful, like she was carrying something breakable. She told me that Daniel had knocked on her door the week before. He'd told her I was having some memory problems, that I'd been confused lately about certain things, finances, dates. He said he was handling my affairs now, and that if she noticed anything concerning about my behavior, she should call him rather than me. I sat across from Bet at my kitchen table and listened to every word. I didn't interrupt. When she finished, there was a long silence. "Are you having memory problems, Margaret?" she asked. "No," I said, "I am not." She believed me. Bet has known me too long not to. She reached across the table and held my hand for a moment. Then she said, "I thought you should know." After she left, I sat alone for a very long time. I thought about the cardiologist who had started answering Daniel's questions. I thought about Karen's interest in whether I could manage the stairs. I thought about Daniel's name on the car insurance and his request for bank access and the fence Gerald built that was now gone. I thought about the word confused being used to describe me, by my own son to my own neighbor without my knowledge. I opened a notebook. I started writing things down. Not out of rage, out of clarity. The Sunday it all came to a head was October 12th. I remember the date because it was close to what would have been my wedding anniversary, and I had been feeling soft that week, remembering Gerald, feeling his absence in that particular way anniversaries bring. I arrived at church early, as I always do. I sat in my pew. I said my quiet prayers. The sanctuary smelled of old wood and candle wax, the way it always does in autumn when the heat comes on for the first time. Daniel and Karen arrived late, as they usually did, and slid into the pew beside me. Karen was wearing a new coat, pale blue. Daniel was in his good suit. After the service, Pastor Willis made his usual announcements, and then asked if anyone had anything they wanted to share with the congregation, celebrations, needs, prayer requests. It was a tradition we had kept for years, an open moment. I had planned to speak. I had been working up to it quietly for weeks. I was not going to make accusations. I was simply going to ask the congregation, my church family, for guidance, for support, for the kind of collective wisdom that a body of people who love each other is capable of. I was going to be measured. I was going to be dignified. I stood up, and Daniel put his hand on my arm, firm, not gentle, and said, in a voice low enough that only the nearby pews could hear but loud enough to be unmistakable, "Mom, sit down. This isn't the time." I looked at him. He looked back at me with that expression I had come to know, patient, slightly pained, the face of a man managing a difficult situation. The face of a son who had decided his mother needed managing. "Sit down," he said again. "You're confused." That word again. I heard someone nearby shift uncomfortably. I saw Dorothy Mason, who has sat 3 pews behind me for 30 years, look away. I saw Pastor Willis watching from the front with careful eyes. I sat down, not because I was told to. I sat down because I had already decided what came next, and it did not require me to stand. What people don't understand about moments like that one is that the silence isn't defeat. Some silences are preparations. I had learned in the 3 months since Bet's visit to observe very carefully, not just Daniel, but everyone around him. The way Karen had started calling herself my primary contact on forms she filled out without asking me. The way Daniel had told his cousin Jerry that I'd had a spell at the grocery store, a story that was not true, not even close to true. The way certain of my friends had begun speaking to me slightly more slowly, slightly more loudly, as if perhaps they had heard something that made them reconsider how clearly I could follow a sentence. A narrative had been constructed about me, carefully, gradually, in places I hadn't been watching. I was the confused mother, the one who needed looking after, the one whose judgment couldn't quite be trusted anymore. The purpose of that narrative I had come to understand was the house. Gerald's house, worth somewhere around $340,000 in the current market, according to an appraiser I'd quietly hired 6 weeks before. A house with no mortgage, in my name alone, that I had never given anyone any reason to take from me. A house my son wanted to help me manage. I had spent those 3 months not fighting, not confronting, not making any accusations I couldn't support. Instead, I had been building something. I had met twice with an attorney in Crossville whose name Stephanie had quietly found for me. I had gathered bank statements, insurance documents, medical records. I had asked my doctor to put in writing, formally, clinically, that I showed no signs of cognitive impairment. She was glad to. She was, in fact, appalled at the suggestion otherwise. I had written down what Bet told me, and what I had observed in my own home, and what Daniel had told various people about my mental state, and I had organized it into a document that was quiet and factual and thorough. And then I had written a letter. The letter took me 4 drafts. The first draft was too angry. Not wild, I don't do wild. But there was something hard in it, something brittle, and I knew if it was read in that tone it would feel like an attack, and I didn't want an attack. I wanted the truth. The second draft was too soft, too apologetic, too much of the woman I had spent 3 months worrying I might be forced to become. The third draft was too long. Good information, but too much of it. People stop listening when they're overwhelmed. The fourth draft was 2 pages. Calm, clear, factual. It began with who I was: Margaret Louise Hale, lifelong member of First Baptist Church, widow of Gerald Hale, mother of 2, owner of my own home and mind and life. It laid out without embellishment what had been happening over the past 18 months, the meetings with my doctor, the conversation with Bet, the statements made to neighbors and family members about my mental state, the steps I had taken to protect my finances and my legal standing. It did not accuse Daniel of anything illegal. It simply told the truth about what had been done and what I had done in response. And it ended with this: I am not confused. I am not in need of management. I am a woman who has been paying attention. I have the documents to prove it. And I am asking my church community to witness that I am standing here, clear-eyed and whole, and that I will not be spoken over in a house of God or anywhere else. I folded it, I put it in a plain envelope. I wrote Pastor Willis on the front. I had it in my purse the morning Daniel told me to sit down. After the service ended, while people were gathering their things and moving toward the doors and the fellowship hall, I walked to the front of the sanctuary. Quietly, without hurrying. Daniel was behind me somewhere. I heard him say my name once in that managing tone. I didn't turn. Pastor Willis was speaking with the choir director near the piano. He looked up when I approached. Something in my face must have told him this was not small talk, because he excused himself and stepped toward me. I held out the envelope. "I need you to read this," I said, And then I need you to read it aloud to the congregation, please, before they leave." He looked at me for a moment. "Margaret." "I know what I'm asking," I said. "I know it's unusual, but there are people in this room who have been told things about me that are not true, and I am asking you to help me correct that, in front of God and in front of them." He took the envelope. He looked at it for a moment, at my handwriting on the front, and then he looked back at me. "Give me a minute to read it," he said. I nodded. I went and stood at the side of the room, near the stained glass window with the shepherd and the lamb. It has always been my favorite window. I stood there and waited. Pastor Willis read the letter where he stood, by the piano. I watched his face. He read it twice. Then he walked to the front of the sanctuary and raised his voice, that Sunday morning voice that carries to every corner. "Could I have everyone's attention for just a moment, before you go?" The room quieted. People turned. Daniel was near the back door, Karen beside him. He had a look I hadn't seen on him before, something between irritation and alarm. Pastor Willis cleared his throat. "I've been handed a letter by Margaret Hale," he said. "I want to read it to you, with her permission and at her request." And he read it. All of it, every word I had written, in his steady, unhurried voice, with the kind of care he gave to Scripture. He did not rush the parts that were uncomfortable. He did not soften them. He read them exactly as I had written them. The room was absolutely still. I did not look at Daniel the whole time the letter was being read. I looked at Dorothy Mason, who was pressing her hand to her mouth. I looked at T-Bet, who was nodding slowly, tears on her face. I looked at the shepherd in the window. When Pastor Willis finished, he folded the letter and said, simply, "Margaret has asked me to let the congregation know that she is well, that her mind is clear, and that she is asking for your prayers and your honest witness." He paused. "I've known this woman for 40 years. She is one of the most grounded people I have ever had the privilege of knowing. I believe every word of what I just read." Then the room did something I did not expect. It was not applause, that would have been wrong, too loud, too much. It was something quieter. People began moving toward me. Dorothy, Bet, the Hendersons from the fourth pew, old Mr. Calloway, who uses a cane and moves slowly but moved toward me anyway. Daniel did not come forward. He left through the back door with Karen, and the door closed behind them with a sound I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Not a slam, just a closing, he called that evening. I let it go to voicemail. The message was 12 minutes long. Some of it was angry, some of it was hurt. Some of it, near the end, sounded like a person who had been caught and didn't know what to do with that. He said I had humiliated him. He said I had made him look like a criminal in front of people who had known him since childhood. He said I was being irrational. He did not say he was sorry. I listened to the whole message, twice. Then I wrote down the key parts in my notebook, not out of malice but out of habit. I had learned, in those 3 months, to document things. My attorney had advised me that what Daniel had been doing, spreading false information about my mental competency to neighbors, medical staff, and family members without my knowledge or consent, and pursuing access to my finances without my authorization, was the beginning of a pattern that courts take seriously. Not criminal yet, but documented and serious. I was not going to pursue legal action. That was not what this was about for me, but I wanted him to know that I could, that I was not the confused, manageable woman he had decided I was, that I had been watching and building and waiting, not because I wanted to punish him, but because I needed to be safe in my own life. I sent him a letter the following week, shorter than the one at church. It said, "I love you, I will always love you, but what you have been doing to my reputation and my autonomy has to stop. I have a lawyer. I have documentation. I have witnesses. If you would like to have a real relationship with me, one where you treat me as an adult capable of managing her own affairs, I would like that very much. The door is open, but it opens from my side." He didn't respond for 3 weeks. Stephanie called me the day after the church service. She had heard, because of course she had heard, because word travels in families like water finds the lowest ground. She was quiet for a long time on the phone, and then she said, "I'm sorry, Mama. I should have said something sooner. I knew something was wrong." "You didn't have all of it," I told her. "I had some of it," she said. We cried together for a while on the phone. Not with drama or loud grief, just the quiet, exhausted kind of crying that two women do when they have been holding something too long. Then she said, "What can I do?" I told her. She did it. I am not a person who believes everything happens for a reason. I find that phrase, honestly, a little too easy. A little too tidy for the kinds of things that actually happen to people. But I do believe that what we do with what happens to us says something important about who we are. Here is what I chose to do. I stayed in my house. I kept my accounts. I kept my name on everything that had my name on it. I kept going to church, third pew from the left, every Sunday, and I did not look small when I walked in. I held my head in the same position it has always been in. I started a small garden that spring. Nothing ambitious, just tomatoes and zucchini and a row of marigolds along the front path. Gerald always wanted a garden. I was always too busy. I am not too busy now, and I find that working with my hands in the dirt is a form of prayer I hadn't found before. I joined a group at the library. Women my age, some of them with similar stories, some with entirely different ones. We read books and talk about them and sometimes talk about our lives instead. It is not therapy. It is just the honest company of women who have lived long enough to say true things. Daniel came back eventually. It took almost 4 months. He knocked on my door on a Wednesday evening in February, without Karen, and he stood on my porch with his hat in his hands. Literally, his winter hat in his hands, and he looked like a man who had done a significant amount of reckoning with himself in private. I made him stand on the porch for a full minute before I opened the door, not out of cruelty, just so that moment had its proper weight. I let him in. I made coffee. He talked for a long time, and some of what he said was defensive, and some of it was honest, and some of it, near the end, was the kind of thing a child says when they finally admit they were afraid, not of me, but of losing me, of the shape of the world without me in it, of the part of himself that didn't know how to love without controlling. I don't know if I fully believe all of it. I'm a woman who has learned to listen with both ears, one for what is said and one for what is underneath it. But I believed enough of it to let him stay for dinner, and to tell him, plainly, that we could build something different, something honest, but that it would require him to see me as I actually am, and not as a problem he needed to solve. He nodded, he ate his soup, he washed his bowl before he left. That's not a happy ending. It's just a beginning that has the shape of something real. I am telling this story because I know there are women who are living inside an earlier chapter of it right now. Maybe your children are making decisions around you, not with you. Maybe someone has started asking questions about your finances that feel less like concern and more like accounting. Maybe you've noticed that people who used to ask about your life have started asking about your health, your capacity, your plans, as if the main question about you is no longer who you are but how long you'll last and what you'll leave behind. I want to say something directly to those women. You are not imagining it. And you are not required to be loud about it. You are not required to make a scene or burn down the relationship or stand in the middle of your church and weep. None of that is required. What is required, what saved me was this: I paid attention. I wrote things down. I found one good lawyer and one good friend and one doctor who would put her professional opinion on paper. I protected myself quietly, the way a sensible woman protects herself. And then, when the moment came, I was ready. That letter was not written in anger. It was written in love, the hard, honest, boundary-keeping kind of love that sometimes looks cold to people who are only comfortable with the yielding kind. My mother used to say that a woman's silence is either her strength or her surrender, and it takes wisdom to know which one she's choosing at any given moment. At that church in that pew, when Daniel told me to sit down and I sat down, I was not surrendering. I was preparing. I was choosing the silence that precedes the thing that matters. The letter was the thing that mattered. If something in this story felt familiar to you, if you recognized a pew or a kitchen table or a voice that said sit down, or you're confused or we're just trying to help, I want you to know that you are not alone and you are not too late. Find your bet. Find your pastor or your librarian or your daughter who suspected something was wrong but didn't have all the pieces. Find the attorney in the next county who will listen before they charge you. Write things down. Build quietly. And when your moment comes, and it will come, because you will make it come, be ready. You have been paying attention your whole life. That is not something that goes away. Margaret Louise Hale lives in Cookeville, Tennessee. She grows tomatoes. She reads on her porch. She goes to church on Sundays, third pew from the left.